What she'd tried not to think about were Angelo's parting words. His voice, when he'd said them, had left her unnerved. The look in his eyes had perplexed her. It was as if their nearly 4 years together hadn't existed at all, when she knew very well that they had. She'd been 16 the night she'd sneaked upstairs to his bed. Too emotionally young, too mentally immature, physically just right. Granted, they hadn't really dated before he left for Cornell, but that year and the ones that followed had happened. She'd still gone out with her friends, he'd still gone out with his. They'd each met a need in the other. She'd given him an escape from the pressure that came with being the oldest of 6, and a natural athlete with no desire to play college ball. He'd wanted to study architecture, to be Frank Lloyd Wright, the same way Sierra wanted to be Yo-Yo Ma. Luna got that. Sierra got that. No one else had. And Angelo had gotten her. Even if he'd had a car of his own, he would never have used it to impress her. He had used his star quarterback status, but she couldn't blame him. That even impressed her father. He'd read the same books she did, because she did, and listened to her rant about plots gone wrong. She'd ranted about the movie versions of her favorites sucking. He'd listened then, too. He'd listened to everything. And now that they'd kissed, yes, she'd wanted it, after their history. How could she not? But she was old enough to know getting what she wanted was not necessarily a good thing. She wanted ice cream, daily, Rocky Road or Vanilla Bean. She wanted pizza, Greek pizza with spinach and red onions and Kalamata olives and feta cheese. She wanted salted caramel apple cupcakes from Butter's Bakery. And really, there were more things she wanted than food, and food shouldn't even be on her mind after all she'd ordered at Melina's. It was that kiss, making her hungry, making her want more of him, making her ache to end up exactly where he'd said they would. She'd wanted to slap him for suggesting such intimacy was inevitable, as if she hadn't gained any self-restraint, as if she hadn't learned to say no. Please. She was over him, completely over him, and she had been for 8 years. That kiss meant nothing. She refused to let it. Pushing open her door, she forced herself out, pocketing her keys as she heard another vehicle brake to a stop on Three Wishes Road's gravel shoulder. Praying it wasn't Oliver Gatlin again, she turned, and was genuinely surprised and pleased to see Will Bowman climbing from his big Keller construction pickup. He headed toward her, the sun casting a funhouse shadow of his tall, lanky body down the driveway and onto her car. Welcoming the distraction, she walked away from the house, where Angelo waited, to meet him. "Will! What are you doing here?" His smile was coy, the light glinting off strands of his blue-black hair.
"Wanted to see where you've been spending all your time."
The implication being that she wasn't spending it with him. Or was she reading more into the one dinner he'd cooked for her months ago? "I've been busy, which working for 10, you should know. And from what I hear, Kaylee's house has been keeping you busy, too." He nodded, shoved his fists into the pockets of his skinny black jeans.
"Who knew the short-term gig for the cafe would turn into a long-term gig after the fire? Though a lot of the delay goes to the insurance company for dicking around so long."
"I'm just glad the house was salvageable. I haven't driven by in weeks. I'm anxious to see how it looks."
"It looks a lot like it did 100 years ago. Or it will once the exterior's painted. Though I have a feeling the particular shade of blue Kaylee chose is completely anachronistic."
Luna laughed. "I imagine Kaylee is less concerned about being period authentic than she is being able to live there. She loves that house."
"You're preaching to the choir, sweetheart."
Will was saying as Angelo walked up, his scowl no doubt spawned by Will's casual familiarity. Will scowled, too, his upward chin jerk and the resulting flip of his ironically emo hair equally and unnecessarily territorial. Men. Such ridiculous posturing. As if either one of them had laid claim to her. As if she'd let either one of them do such a thing. Angelo Caffey, Will Bowman. Angelo's sister was my best friend in high school, and this was their house. And I met Will a few